Hey Collective, it's Alan coming to you with a standalone piece that will be for the YouTube audience, specifically geared towards those spiritual teachers dressed as students. But just as we go into it, understand that there will also be other information for the students who are entering the higher realms or students who are graduating at different levels. There will be tidbits of information for them. So if it's something you already know, just kind of let it pass you. And if it's something out of your reach, that's not something that you're necessarily meant to know. So don't reach for something that's not in your grasp just yet. Just listen to what's applicable to you, and then we'll go from there. But to begin, as you guys know, I've been prepping everyone to understand that we're heading towards the year 2025, and there's a great deal of change with the next reset that will be taking effect as soon as that arrives. But for those of you dressed as teachers dressed as students, and those of you who are reporting on the ground level on part of the divine, you specifically have something due during Thanksgiving, obviously the chord of sacred truth, which is always gratitude. It's the best time to submit your report as to what your experiences have been, what your testimonies are, meaning the tests that you have incurred, and what you learned from it. What were the lessons that you converted into blessings, all of which are within the same context, and submit it in an objective way. Meaning for those of you called to be a delegate on behalf of humanity and of the higher realms, understand that there's something about objectivity that's required at this time, and there's no better season to find that within yourself and your own inner voice than that of the season of gratitude that is Thanksgiving. In America specifically, that's a holiday we share, but for the world, as we know, as we head into the holiday season, it's a great deal of gratitude for all the blessings and everything we've incurred. So what better time to submit the report that's due by the end of the year than that time? So be advised that the way that you want to approach it, from what I've been told, is that you want to approach it in the context of being grounded in an objective format, allowing yourself to pepper it with your own personal op-ed as you go. Meaning, beginning the sentence that deviates a little bit from the objectivity by saying, now this is an Al statement, like if it was me, or this is a your name statement, or this is my personal opinion on the situation, regardless of what the questions will be. For those of you who understand what we're talking about, you know that starting around November 1st, you will start to receive different downloads of questions that you will then be responding to on behalf of a greater community or a greater department that you serve. Each of you have different department heads depending on what spiritual level you're at or what it is that you've been doing in the Great Earth Academy, and you will then be assigned your new task as we go into 2025 depending on what the global or the cosmic election has decided. So understand that your mission may change, and the things that you used to do may change as well. So don't be afraid of those changes, because what is life without change, and how can you learn without it? So just be very strong at this time and understand that your opinion is very important, but more objectively, or more importantly, your objectivity as to what you've seen and witnessed is going to be really relevant as we move forward. Now, for those of you who are students entering the higher realms, what I will say is this. There's a great deal of transition that waits for us on the other end of 2025. But there is a great deal of karmic debt that will also need to be repaid by a great many people. And it's part of the next wave of the awakening, which we knew was coming, but that has been led by people who you will find as pillars of hope or pillars of the future. And you will be able to identify them by the wording and the way that they've expressed themselves, and if it speaks to your soul as opposed to just your mind or your heart. And so it's going to be very important for you to identify them now as you begin to face your own shadow and become part of the process that is evolution. As we move forward, you can see a great divide forming within the collective, which is basically pulling people in either a descending manner or in an ascending manner, meaning that they're rising above the fray and finding their way forward, or they're descending back to more primitive states where they're dogmatic or kind of hypocritical and doing things that you can clearly see are not in your best interest. And as you begin to walk your path as a student, you will have to learn discernment, and you'll have to understand the difference between karma and paying back student loans. And so for this particular part, what I would say is karma is something based on your choices. It's the cause and effect. When you do things throughout your life experience, especially in the school that is the Great Earth Academy, you have learned that there are both positive and negative results to the choices that you make daily. But in the end, you are solely responsible for the choices that you make. And as you move forward, you're going to find yourself, especially in 2025, feeling the results of the choices that we made, especially since the last reset of 2020. So for those of you who are students who understand that there were things that happened that were corrupted, and there were things that people tried to take a hold of that was of divine purpose that they tried to pervert or corrupt somehow. And if you fell into the category of falling for it, you may still face consequences for those choices because you went against yourself. And so understand that it's not always going to be detrimental or dire to your life experience, but you will be part of a collective that will experience highs and lows and kind of go on the roller coaster that is about to commence 2025. Having said that, the wheel of fate turns for everyone. And those that were once on top may find themselves on the bottom. And those that were on the bottom, those that were last, will come first. So understand that a lot of it will be related to what you've incurred and what you've overcome throughout your life, and whether you have prioritized yourself and known your worth to realize what it is that you are of value to and how you serve the greater collective. Have you been miserly and narcissistic? Have you not paid attention to community, and all that stuff will all play a part into what happens in 2025 for us individually, and then even more so as a whole. So as the teachers, the rest of students will attest, we know that there will be consequences that all of us will have to face because of a small group of people. And that's okay, because for a lot of the teachers, they've already gone through the proxy version of it, the dry run, and they will be able to withstand it with almost ease. And so you will want to be around people like that, because they will help you understand how they navigated that uncertainty and how they made it through the dark night of the soul journey, or how they made it through the desert. And these people will speak to you, like I said, at a soul level as opposed to just intellectually or heartily. It's very important for you to remember that, because there is a difference between paying back your karma or paying back karmic debt on behalf of yourself and then also your family, especially if you're the last person in line of your family. Some of us belong to the Dead Parents Club, where we're the last heir of a particular family, and so we have faced an additional set of circumstances and situations that help not only release us at the end, but also our families. And so it's very important for you to be very strong, very courageous, and understand that you are incredibly important to the relay race that is your family. Noting that this does not apply to your wife or your husband, meaning, let's say that a person is married to another person, a karmic situation, let's say, and one person does all of the work that's required of them in the school. They've done the personal introspection, they faced their shadow, they've overcome all their addictions, they're working through whatever they need to work through, and they're consistently working on their spiritual position and the positioning of ascending. They're constantly doing it, but their partner is not. One person finishes it and begins their freedom. The person they're married to, just by proxy, does not get to go with them. The people that would be released would be the immediate lineage of who got you to where you are in your direct family. Your mom and dad, up and down, grandma, grandpa, all the way up. But it wouldn't be for your brothers and sisters or your uncles and aunts. It has to do with direct descendants and the ascension of that path. And basically, finishing up for many of you all of the work that they have been doing throughout their lifetimes. By now, many of you have come to understand that we are a relay race. My mother handed me the baton, and I've run the baton. And then her mother handed her the baton. And there are things that each of us have been trying to actualize and manifest throughout our experiences. And many of you who are on the receiving end of good karma are going to experience the payoff of all of what they've done. And hopefully by the time it's done, you will be, as they say, ransomed, or you will be released from it, and you will no longer have to incarnate. And when you are released, from what I'm understanding, I could be wrong, this is an Al statement, but from what I've been understanding through the downloads, is that my mother and my grandma also are released. And that's super sacred, right? That's something very important for us to keep in our mind, that sometimes when we are a soldier in the divine army, we're not just working for ourselves, but we're working on behalf of our ancestors. And there's something quite beautiful and quite sacred about it. So wear that badge with honor, understanding that titles mean nothing where we're going, but it's nice to know that you are a fighting soldier on behalf of your family and not just yourself, especially if you feel very lonely. But again, it does not apply to your husband and wife that does not do the equal work. Many of you are going to find yourself being resettled and moved in order to align with the right people and the right communities. And a lot of it's going to be based on the testimonies that you share during this season. Now, the cosmic vote that you are participating in, for those of you that are teachers dressed as students, is separate from the testimonies you would share. And the way that I look at it is like this. There is something called student loans that we all understand. When you're in an academy or you're in a school, especially a private one as elite as the Great Earth Academy, you understand that there's a lot of concerted effort that brought this all into manifestation, and that you may have some debt that's not karmic that needs to be paid off in the service that you bring to the world. And some of the best, easiest steps to take before you're handed your next assignment is to share your testimony. Because what it does is it attracts other like-minded people who have either gone through what you're going through or who understand your mission and want to partner or work with you in some way, shape, or form. And it brings you towards each other as opposed to further apart. And so it's super important during the Thanksgiving holiday as you prepare to share your personal testimony if you're a delegate with the higher realms, that you also allow yourself to pay down student loans by sharing your more intrinsic personal things that you've overcome. And this is a great opportunity for me to share what I mean. So I've been going through the ascension process for quite some time, as many of you know, and I've been very vocal about it, and I don't mind if people find me weird or frou-frou or whatever the hell they call me. I'm not worried about other people's opinions. But one of the things that I've been very forthright with is that there are different voids and different parts to the ascension process that can be a little jarring. And one of the things that I discovered recently is I went through a week where suddenly I entered a space. I woke up on a Monday. I was grumpy. There was no reason. I'm a very happy person. My life is pretty damn good. I don't have a lot materially, but that's not what drives me. So I'm very content. But I woke up grumpy. I woke up grumpy Monday, and I knew from the moment I opened my eyes, I'm like, I told my higher realms, I said it out loud as I was waking up, I go, I'm going to be probably a little bit of a bitch this week. I don't know what I'm working through, but it's very present in my consciousness. And it was something that my subconscious was trying to push through, and I couldn't force it, so I had to allow it. So I spent the week going through this kind of like up and down thing about feeling like, well, you know, this and that and blah, 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 blah. And I was very vocal with my guides and with whatever you believe in with God, if you're a person of faith, or with whatever your inclination is for life. I was very vocal with them that I'm working with something. Please don't take anything I say at the moment personally. Just understand that I'm trying to navigate this, and the only way through is directly through it. So I just have to experience it. So sure enough, I had to go back to work on Sunday by the time this was all over. And I said, there's no way I'm going to work on Sunday. So I went out, and I had a couple too many beers. And at one moment, I found myself doing something that I had not done in decades, which was I found myself in a situation surrounded by very powerful people, and I started in a slightly buzzed phase to make shit up in order to make myself feel better about who I was in their company. And it was a shadow. And it was something I thought I had put to rest a long time ago, understanding what I'm about to share with you. But at the moment, it resurfaced, and it was what was bugging me, is the self-worth thing. It has nothing to do with the material things that you have in the world. It has to do with your soul and your avatar and what your avatar has overcome or what it struggled through. And sometimes when you are a spiritual being, you're so focused on it that you look at everything you can see in your shadow and you work through it. But that doesn't mean you can see what is unseen. And so it takes something like a tower moment, even if it's a slight thing. I don't really believe in tower moments. I just believe there are lessons that pop up and you just work through it. So I don't really consider them towers. But in that moment, I knew intuitively starting Monday that there was something that needed to come to the surface, and I had to allow it to do it in whatever natural course it was going to take. And sure enough, what it was is in certain environments with very wealthy people, I, for some reason, reverted back to my teenage, 20s, where I would feel like I needed to embellish my life as a creative in order to make myself seem more interesting to the people around me. And I realized that I was basically shunning my life path and what made me truly shine, and I was fabricating things out of insecurity. And though I had worked through it, there must have been an echo in my life experience that needed to be resolved before this next chapter of my life begins. And I wasn't about to shy away from sharing it with you. So understand, students and teachers, that there are things, anything that you can see, you're going to work through, especially at this level. But it's those things that you can't see that need to be allowed to come through. And you have to allow yourself the freedom to experience it outwardly and to just be kind of clear with the universe and whatever you believe in and say, hey, I don't know what's going on, but I don't feel good right now. I don't feel very good about myself. And then let that shadow pop up so you can look at it. Because even though I was slightly buzzed, I knew instinctively when it started what I was doing. And I knew what I had to work through. And my friend looked at me and was kind of like taken back by my actions. He was looking at me, he knows me well enough. He goes, Al, I think I need you to go home. And at first I got like a little offended by it. I'm like, why? I'm not drunk or anything. And he's like, no, I just think that maybe it's time for you to go home. And that's a real friend. So the moment that he said that, I immediately, but took 2 seconds, I was like, well, fuck you. And then 2 seconds later, like, well, actually, thank you. That's a solid thing to do for your friend. That's exactly what I needed to hear. And I walked the rest of the way home playing it backwards, and I realized exactly what I was doing, why I was doing it, and I immediately was able to resolve the issue. By the time I get home, I understood something very clearly, which is it's not what you have materially that makes you interesting to the right people. It's what you've overcome. It's all those things that you feel insecure about that makes you special. And at the end of the day, I'm going to need you guys to know that as we head into 2025. Because what I was doing is I was trying to pepper the gumbo with gumbo that was perfect as it was. There was nothing I needed to do that would change the way that I've lived my life and everything that I've overcome. Every fucking thing that I've gone through makes me the interesting person, not just to the human world, but to the higher realms. How does this fucker keep living? He should be dead by now, but I'm not. So when I was fabricating, I was almost dismissing my own self and not truly valuing my worth. And it was a perfect storm for me to do exactly what I did, which is be a teacher. Which is, oh, I get what I'm doing. Oh, I get why I'm doing it. Okay, well, this needs to stop once and for all. This is what I was waiting for. I knew something was coming because there was insecurity. I suddenly woke up that week and I was insecure, and I haven't been insecure in a long time. I don't really look for other people's validation. So what was this about? But I had to let it play out naturally. And when it showed itself, I was so present that I was able to take the presence out of it and realize it was a gift. And from that gift, I can now share that testimony with you so that you can avoid what I did, which is understand that it is the fact that you come from poverty or that you come from humble beginnings that makes you interesting to other people. Well, how did you become the powerhouse that you become? How do you end up being with someone who is this VIP or I don't know, whatever your future is? You don't get to that person if you are insincere with yourself. And I was devaluing my experience to such a point in that moment that I devolved back to an older expression of myself that was an echo in the back of my head. And now going forward, I can certainly attest that it won't happen again because I realized that what was interesting to other people is the sheer amount of shit I've had to work through. And how did I do it? What is that experience? How does someone survive almost being killed? How does someone survive someone putting a hit on them? How do they survive drug addiction? How do they survive molestation and rape at such a young age? How do they survive a cult? How do they survive having no money? How do they survive being homeless and COVID out of nowhere when they had How do you do that? That is fascinating to the community you are in search of. So when I'm saying to you that this is the time to share your testimonies, I am being quite literal. Guys, as we prepare for 2025, you're pulling in your soul tribes. In fact, there's a trivia question for those of you who belong to the department I belong to that is going to be really important for those of you taking your entrance exams to the higher realms that I'm going to leave towards the end. But let's just say that in the question itself, it's a riddle from the Sphinx. They want to know something specific, but in the vernacular and the way that it's presented that I'm going to be saying will be key to your understanding what department you think it belongs to. Because each department has an archangel or has a being of light or some sort of phenomenal presence that is behind it. And a part of the task for extra bonus points will be, can you figure out which department this riddle comes from? But we'll get there. So the point is, as you head into the season of gratitude, which is all of November, before we go into the holy holiday of the Holy Ghost and, of course, the birth of the big JC, you're going to probably be best prepared to start sharing your testimonies outwardly in the ways that you feel secure. I've mentioned it before in previous videos, but this is the time I'm going to put a lot of strenuous nature to it because I want you guys to really think about it and realize, oh my God, how did I survive? If you're a woman that used to get beaten, how did you walk away from that? How did you finally stand up for yourself? And how did you make it out? Because it's going to help another person, right? Because when shit starts to go down, the people who are already going through shit are going to have even a harder time, right? Someone who's married to an alcoholic will need to hear from someone who escaped that type of relationship and that type of karmic situation. How did they get out? So if you're willing to share stories like that, this next month is super important because it's going to pull in the people who see the value in your journey. And when they see it, they can't unsee it. And you suddenly become more interesting. Which takes me to part 2. Some of you who are doing the entrance exams to the higher realms need to remember something. You're going to be studying information that is not known by the general population, either out of willful ignorance or just because they feel it's taboo or it's not in alignment with their house. A Christian is not going to deviate from Christianity, nor should they. That is run by the big JC, right? Catholicism, the same thing. They have their departments. They have their houses they belong to. But for those of you who don't have a house and have had to go through the phase of the moon, meaning more through the shadow part of it, especially if you're a woman, understanding that for a long time, women weren't allowed, at least in human terms, that's what they told you, weren't allowed in the higher realms, but now you are. In fact, the trivia question that I'm about to present is for both men and women. You knew this bitch was going to represent. I was like, It's not just going to be men that are going into these entrance exams. In this department that I belong to, it's going to be fucking women, too. So it's an equal opportunity question, and it's going to be important for those of you taking your entrance exams. Remembering that there are different departments that will each be giving certain type of information and trivia like this that will be helping you navigate what department you belong to and what your mission in the future might be. But for now, just understand that it's really important to note that as you begin your courses and as you really dive into the higher realms, one of the things you're going to notice is that you're going to maybe lose audience if you are a public figure. And here's what I mean. There are things that you're going to study and you're going to have to learn how to discern what is forward-facing information and what is background information. There's nothing that we keep in the shadow anymore. We're not the secret societies that are dark and hidden, although some of them had to be in order to protect the students. But for going forward, it's not as much needed, but understand that there's going to be information that isn't going to be understood by other people. People who are super, super spiritual are sometimes considered kooky and crazy by people who are not. And that's okay. We're not the same grade level. There's nothing wrong. There's no one ahead, no one behind. There's no judgment here in that way. The higher realms are doing the judgment. So whoever's the observers, the actual department heads, are the ones who are passing judgment. We are just the avatars living the experiences and being of service to those who are cohorts within the academy with us. And teachers, rest of students, you have an extra emphasis, but you know what it is. I'm not going to go into it here. But you understand that you have extra duties that you are responsible for. But the point is, as you learn discernment, you're going to have videos, if you do videos, or testimonies, or blogs, or things that don't do as well physically, that are not meant to do well. And it's important for you to relax and know that sometimes you're not doing anything wrong, but maybe you're touching on a subject that the world is not ready for, and what you're doing is just submitting your own homework. And that is not a wide world event, right? Especially if you're at the higher realms, graduate or thesis. Before you present your thesis, you're going to be doing undergraduate work, and it's not going to be seen by a mass audience. So if you're seeking power or you're seeking fame, then you are probably not in right alignment for this video. This is for spiritualists who understand that no one who has any sound mind wants to be emperor or empress at this time. That is crazy to want to be king at this time, because there's already king and queen and emperors and empresses that have that responsibility. The truest people who can wield the sword of truth or can wield the ring of power is the one who never wanted it to begin with, because they understood every layer to the onion and the sheer amount of responsibility and due diligence that follows anything that they do. So if you're in wrong alignment, you will know. You will be seeking attention when you shouldn't be seeking any type of attention, because what they're trying to tell you is, good job for doing your schoolwork, but if you're looking for people to read it, then you may be slightly in wrong alignment. Because when it's time, there will be no question. The limelight will hit you, if that's what your destiny is, or you might find that you're supposed to be behind the scenes. But whatever your avenue is, you need to do it by being organic and trusting the cosmic universe to do what it's meant to do. And it's super important for those of you who are entering your finals and entering your entrance exams. Because some of us have this impression that we are auditioning for roles in the physical world. No, honey. We're auditioning to the higher realms to fill positions that have yet to be seen by this world. And so understand that some of the information that you will be touching on, or some of the experiences you'll be having, is not necessarily meant to be seen by the entire world until you've done the entirety of your thesis presentation. Again, going back to why there are some teachers dressed as students, in order to help other students on the cusp understand this knowledge. And so if you can understand the idea of student loans in opposition to the idea of karma, then you understand that by sharing your testimonies, whether they're small or large, and whether they're seen or unseen, you are paying back student loans for the sheer amount of energy and effort that it took to put all of this simulation or all of this life experience together. This is not accidental for those of you who get what I'm saying. This obviously took intention, and it takes a great deal of effort on behalf of the divine to keep it going, to help the school grow, and to help us not enter into a prison, which, as you guys see, is part of 2025, will be the battle between heaven and hell. And that's going to be a very, very interesting part. And here's an interesting part about that before I go in. Understand that when the divine does something, it's usually like an acorn or a kernel. It's meant to grow over time. But by the time that the devil, or the dark side, if you will, understands what's happening, they try to corrupt truth in order to keep it suppressed and to keep it out of the sight of people. And so it's going to be very important for you to be very, very, very careful as to who you're aligning yourself with. I'll give you a hint. Sometimes the three-headed snake, the serpent that we were warned of, might have already hit the stage recently. It's very important for you to discern what is true for you and what is not, and to be very strong and courageous in your ability to stand in opposition of certain things. Because some of you are asking to fill roles that will be forward-facing to the world, but you don't want the responsibility that comes with it and all of the hate that can be sent your way. And I'm being very serious. There's nothing easier to do than to bombard somebody through AGI or through AI in general, to use it in order to send a bunch of drones attacks at people. And if you are a shy person or an insecure person, you are not strong enough to withstand the sheer amount of hate that some of the basic celebrities that we see every day are facing. So how can you then fill the role that you were in pursuit of? So that's when you have to take a moment to step back during the season, and as you start to answer these questions that are downloaded into you, take the moment to really analyze what it is that you're asking for, and if it's actually what your intention is. There is nothing wrong with someone who wants to be secure and comfortable in life. There's nothing wrong with money. It's currency, it's energy. But you must give to receive. And so you have to understand that there are sacrifices that are made whenever you are filling roles that you think will bring you limelight and attention, forgetting the fact that everything has a sting to it and it comes at a cost. There is a reason why the devil, if you will, Satan, whatever, the Luciferic energy you want to call it, whatever you call it, the dark side, it will always ask you to sacrifice love and family in order to get your money and your power. That is always the consequence for the devil. And he may give it to you for a year, he may give it to you for 10 years, but he will always take it away and you have lost everything. Whereas the divine will ask you to sacrifice the materialism and the need for power and the need for attention in order to give you everything you've ever wanted privately. There is a reason why the middle class is under siege. It's because they have figured out the riddle. They have family. They have children. They have a life. They're working on balancing the two energies, and nothing rubs the corrupt more wrong or more badly than the idea that there are people who are genuinely happy and have it all. That is why the middle class is under siege. It's because they are balancing it. They are a two-income family that have found a way to truly love each other and preserve their relationship. Even if they divorce each other, they still had a better time than the people who just use other people as objects. And you can see them all over the internet and all over the world right now. So be very conscious of and able to discern the information that you are receiving, because AI can be used for both negative and for light. And here's how you take control of your own life. This is an Al statement. You can always Google and you can always search on YouTube things that you have questions on that raise your vibration, and the algorithm will follow the money, meaning that if that's where your interest lies, then it will feed you that which you are in search of. You just have to learn what you're going to ingest and from who. And it's very important for you guys to be very conscious of the players on the field and those who are going to try to corrupt the divine purpose with superfluous shit in order to confuse the audience into believing that they are of white light, when in truth they are the darkest of shadows, trying to prevent people from reaching freedom. These are all things you're going to have to incur and have to overcome as you make your journey. But it is not as bad as people make it out to be. You just have to be willing to stand on your own and be willing to put yourself out there sometimes in situations where you're not super vulnerable, but where you can attract other like-minded people who get what you're doing and see your higher calling and want to work with you or talk to you in some way, shape, or form. These are individuals who are in alignment with a much higher purpose. Because if humanity wants to go on, it needs to grow up. And that is a harsh lesson that, as we can all attest, anybody who went to college or anybody who left home can attest, was a really, really harsh part of our life. There were a lot of mistakes we made, and this is not the time to point them out. What you want to do is share your testimonies of how you overcame those mistakes and what got you through it. And in order to do that, you have to be a little brave. But understand that divinity is so beautiful. It's such a momentous time in humanity's life. Women are finally getting their due. Men are finally kind of humbling themselves down. There's a balancing between the divine masculine and feminine energies. They're coming together in divine unions. All of this is an orchestration of the new epoch. And many of you will be filling roles that do not exist yet. You're auditioning for the higher realms. You're not auditioning for humanity. And humanity will follow suit when the higher realms pass the vote at the end of the year, and things will change. But know what you're asking for. Know what the consequences are. Know that if you want to be a true leader, sometimes you have to sacrifice love. Not to the devil this time, but because you don't want anything, you can't have children. If you are a powerhouse motivational speaker, you might prioritize your obligations as a spiritualist, right? Priests and nuns do this in right alignment. They sacrifice their own personal life to serve humanity. So if you're striving for some type of role like that, like the Buddha did, then you sacrifice the ability to have a personal life. But for others of you, you will have both. But you need to look at all of the parameters. Don't look at the money, because money is irrelevant. Money is non-transferable. You don't get to take the money with you when you go to heaven or to go to St. Peter's. You don't. It's not real. It's an illusion. And it's kind of what gets most people lost in the simulation the most, is the fact that they become so dependent on that currency that they forget to live their life. How many people have you seen that you really, really enjoy but you feel pity for? They have no one. They have all this money in the world, multiple houses, all these cars, have kids with all of these people. They claim to be happy, but yet they're alone, and they become miserly, corrupted, evil, dark. Because they gave up on life and they realized that they signed the deal with the wrong person. That is their consequence. But understand that 2025 will be a big revelation for all of that, and you're going to see those people much more clearly. So who you align yourself with at this point is very, very important. So having said that, what I want to say is I want to point something out to you guys that I found to be very instrumental to my own ascension, which is not only allowing your shadow to present itself, because again, if you can see it, you can work on it on your own, but sometimes you can't see what the subconscious is trying to present you. And like you saw in my personal testimony, it's something that I needed to see because it's an echo of something that no longer needed to ever be true. And now that I fully register it, it killed it. It's not going to pop up again. And it's also really important because let's say my divine counterpart loves me for me, I would constantly, if I hadn't worked through that or seen that shadow, would constantly be wondering why me? What do you mean, why me? Have you seen me? Have you seen this shit? You know what I mean? But I needed to resolve that. So understand as you're going through, one of the things that really helped me is I started to do this thing where I would process information. And what I would look to do is I would find elders and masters, if you will, like the big JC or Mary Magdalene or obviously God or Metatron or whoever you believe in. The archangels, Michael, for those of you who are Catholic, Gabriel, Uriel, Raphael, or Jewish because you believe in at least Michael and Gabriel. All those archetypes meant something to me. They were something that fed into my moral and ethical fiber, and they really guided me along my path. So I started to do something that I think would be very beneficial for some of you. I started to ask them directly out to go with me for a walk. Because when you're going through a spiritual path, you spend a lot of time alone processing your shadow and facing your demons. And as you do that, sometimes you spend a lot of time by yourself, listening to music or meditating or being at home. And what I started to do when I started to really work through my shadow is I started to ask, like, I don't know, God, do you want to go have coffee with me? And I would literally go, I didn't need anything from him, but I just invited that energy to come spend time with me. And I opened the avenue of dialogue because I didn't need anything other than just their presence. Sometimes when you're lonely, the idea that God might be with you is super important, and it can make you survive anything. Trust me, I know. You know, when you're raped as a man, like, you sometimes need to figure out shit. And one of the best things I ever did is I just said, you know, I don't need any advice right now, boss, but could you maybe walk with me? And I went out for a walk. And whether they respond or whether it's true or not true, the point is that you're opening up a channel to higher realms of consciousness. If I'm really lost in philosophy, if there's something philosophical that I can't figure out, I'll call on Alan Watts. He's one of my favorite professors. I call him Leonardo da Vinci, or I'll call him Alan Watts. And it sounds silly, but when you align yourself with that type of person and you know enough about their lives, it can kind of help you navigate something that you feel intuitively is in somehow alignment with them. And it's something that I always think is just a great way of also showing gratitude for all of the teachers and masters and elders that have walked the grounds and have left us the breadcrumbs that are now allowing us to be the pioneers for the new epoch that's now coming into full focus. Now, remembering the solar flare thing. Guys, the solar flares are really, really important. Understand that I've been telling you guys for the past 3 months that I feel like it's mom and dad flashing the lights. For those of you who are earth angels, you may be going home. So just finish up what you need to finish up, but be very clear with your wants and what your desires are, because some of you will not be going home. Azrael, death, the angel of death, is not coming for everybody, but the wheel turns equally for everyone at all times. And so the people who are exiting, maybe they're just older, maybe it's time to go, but that's not your fate. Don't attach yourself to other people's fates because you see the world going one way if you represent something in complete opposition. If you are love and light and you have been a divine vessel for a very long time, then why would you ever believe that you are going to suffer or incur the damages that will come to those who have been perverted or corrupting it? That's not your fate. But if you attach yourself to that mentality, then you manifest what you are thinking. So be very clear and conscious, especially during this time of testimony, where you share with the world what it is that you can share, as you decipher and learn as you move up and down the ladder that is the evolution of our consciousness. Understand that when you share these things, it really serves a great deal of other people, but you have avenues at your disposal that opens up the gates to other elders and masters that may be really beneficial. I love spending time with the idea of the Buddha. And when I meditate, I love calling on the Buddha. I don't know if he ever responds. I mean, I've never seen him pop up. But I can feel really peaceful energy and a joy that comes over me. So what harm is that in your life? But it's really a great way to say thank you to those energies who fought the good fight. Many people, like the big JC, made the ultimate sacrifice. There are elders and masters who have made ultimate sacrifices on behalf of humanity. Especially like if you look at someone like Lily. The Lily made the ultimate sacrifice. She was taken by Satan. And she did it on behalf of humanity. There are things that we don't know all the way about, and you will never learn what you're looking for unless you ask the right energies, the right questions. And there's nothing wrong with having hope always be what fills your heart. In fact, we're going to need that going forward. So as the wheel turns for everybody, be vocal with what you can be vocal about. Know what you need to hold back, because this is not something other people will understand. Walking up to someone who is in a homeless situation where they're drug addicted and immediately barking about them how I got out of it is the wrong course of action. To them, the only thing you can really do at that moment is to witness them, ask them if they need anything as best as you can without involving yourself, and kind of try to understand where they're coming from, because it's a journey that the divine is on, right? It's something that all of us are experiencing equally in different intervals, right? Everybody has their cross to bear. Figuring out what the cross to bear, it might be part of your assignment down the road. It takes compassion and empathy. It takes love and light. And sometimes in order to do that, you also attract a lot of negative energy. But remember, you are ultimately protected, especially if you're at this vibration. But understand, this is the time of testimony. So share what you can share, learn what you need to learn, and walk the path as best you can, understanding that sometimes you take 2 steps forward and you take 4 steps back. Why? Because you missed something. Don't take it. Why are you racing? Don't show up to the gates and be denied because you didn't do it authentically. Instead, do what I do. I tell them all the time, I'm about to do something that might piss some of y'all off. I'm going to do it because I need to learn this lesson. Obviously, some of us need to put our finger in that socket over and over again. And then I stopped putting my finger in that socket. And suddenly things that used to be enjoyable to me, I'm just like, I'm good. There was no force. I didn't have to force anything. Sorry, my hair is in my face. There's nothing I had to force. It just happened over time. Time is the ultimate illusion, but it is a progression. It's just a marking of different intervals of your journey. And time is not linear, it's circular. So understand that you will circle back to some things like I did recently that I shared with you guys in order to once and for all resolve it so that you can continue forward. Consider yourself at the point, for some of you, where you're about to be catapulted forward. But understand where you're landing. Don't just be superfluous about it, or don't just be, namby-pamby about it and be like, well, whatever happens, okay. No, I get that. You drift like a cloud, float like the water. I get that. But know where you're heading when you land. Because if you're giving an assignment, if you're given an assignment in front of the world, to understand that you have to understand what your aim is. So at least have the trajectory of where you're going when they pull it back. And when you're shot, understand that there are consequences to where you're going. Let's say something hypothetical. Let's say one of you beautiful women meet this gorgeous hunk of man. I don't know. We're gonna go with that because a lot of people are really into the cuffing season. So okay, let's say you meet the perfect guy, and really the perfect guy, a divine man, a divine masculine. For those of you who are divine feminines, you meet him. You're a modest woman. You're a secretary. He's the owner that meets you at a coffee house. If you're still struggling with self-worth issues, then you may push him away because he already sees the best part of you, but you're still holding on to the worst part of you because you're afraid that that's all they're going to see. Then you're still having shadow to work through. It's not in right alignment. But if you show up and you're just like, no, I'll tell you what I've been through, you'll understand that it's what you've been through that ends up getting the ring. He'll look at you and be like, holy shit, I wish that never happened to you. Oh my gosh, really? How did you overcome that? Love, right? Love is when two souls come together and they bring unity to each other. They uplift one another and they bring hope to the world. And from that, they beget either children or really beautiful things in divine unions that help humanity in the next epoch. These are all very important aspects that are playing out right now. So, now that I've talked for 40 minutes, let me conclude with the trivia question. Again, this is for those of you who are taking the entrance exams to the higher realms, now available to both men and women. They finally got rid of that whole bullshit dogma crap about women not being allowed because they were doty or silly or whatever that crap was. In fact, if you guys saw my last blog post on LinkedIn, I was pretty adamant about how much I've always had a moral issue with that shit. I understand why it was there. For those of you who are teachers, rest of students, we understand why that was the thing back in the day. But that's no more, right? When we enter this new epoch, it's the rise of the divine feminine as she meets her divine masculine mate. And as that plays out, we're starting to balance the scale. So this is available to both masculines and feminines. Obviously divine, of divine purpose and divine origin on that path at least. Here's a question. And this is for your entrance exams. Now, remember, in the wording, in the question itself, you may be able to decipher which head of the department it belongs to. And if you do understand it better, you will understand your mission and purpose in life going forward. That's all I'm going to say. I can't tell you anymore. So here's the trivia question. What does interstellar, what does the arrival, and what does Agatha all along all share in common? Note that if you need further instructions, the best way to describe where to look is to think meta. Good luck. You got this. All right, guys. So that's going to conclude this particular video. As you can see, it kind of crossed a bunch of gamuts. But don't forget, for you that are elders or teachers dressed as students, don't forget you have the report to submit by the end of the year. I personally would recommend by Thanksgiving because it's a great time of introspection. You're surrounded by family and a lot of love and light. And for those of you who don't have family, those of you who are like me, who are part of the Dead Parents Club, then you understand it's a great time for you to be able to go inwards without being sad and instead find all of what you've overcome. And it kind of brings you up out of the darker parts of the holidays and kind of gives you an opportunity to do something pretty creative. And as you go into understand that starting after Halloween, you're going to start receiving downloads about questions and things intuitively that you will want to resolve in your own head so that whenever your department calls you up, if they need to, that you are able to then be there. And each of you will have that differently because each of you have different skill sets. Some of you are more mystic, some of you are psychic, some of you are intuitive. It depends on where your department lands. But be aware of that's going to be a possibility, and to go into it with a lot of great joy and light because you are serving as a delegation for a much higher consciousness and someone who's been very, very forthcoming with the fact that there's a lot of change in the way. But understand that some of you cannot receive the blessings you have without change. So 2025 is not a bad thing. It's not going to be bad, well, at least not for everybody. But there's going to be a lot of things to happen. Especially even in America, just in a small scope. For those of you who aren't from America, we're about to have our election between these two. And I'm just telling you right now, whatever the results are, it's going to be a thing. But the point is that not everyone's fate is tied to you. You have your own fate. And the best thing you can do is do the work required of you. Show up as best you can if you're a teacher. Make sure it's objective. Pepper it with your own statements, starting by your name. This is a me statement. This is what I believe. Statements like that. In order to really be able to really work it out in your head in case you are called before them. And then for the rest of you, just understand that there is a great epoch that begins now. One of a lot of balance, a lot of justice, a lot of love, and a lot of light. But sometimes in order to get there, you have to navigate through the shadowy part. And speaking as someone who's dealt with a lot of shadow, the best thing you can sometimes do when you overcome something and when you work your way through it is to share the shadow with other people who may be experiencing it and allow them to come to you if they want to. That way they keep their freedom and their free will. The biggest warning I will conclude with is be cautious of anyone who says that they believe in freedom, free will, or freedom of speech, but then immediately follows up with except for these people, because that's what the Nazis used to do. They used to say that they believed in all this stuff, and then they would purposely focus on one. It's the same principle. Be very cautious of information like that and beings like that, because they are possibly misleading you. But in the end, only you can decide what path and avenue you take, because in the end, all paths lead home. Have a good day.